This is the In The Cove Podcast.
Welcome to the In The Cove Podcast. My name's Rob Caldor.
And I'm Jackie Barker, founder of In The Cove.
Jackie, we're back after, we did one, a month or so ago, but the regular, semi-regular podcasts will keep happening, informing people of the area what's going on. So, Jackie, what's going on?
Well, Rob, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a federal election. Have you noticed? Nothing really happening?
No, not much going on at all, but, these things go from a macro to a micro level. So how is it affecting all of us in the Cove?
Well, you can't walk through the plaza without being inundated with people wanting to talk to you, and that, you either love it or you hate it. Some people hate it, some people love it, but more importantly, In The Cove always has their finger on the pulse, and we'll be having on Monday, 9th of May, at 7:30pm, a Meet the Candidates forum on Zoom, and we're doing it on Zoom because we found that it's much easier for parents to access, and also you can also watch the recording afterwards. And so far we've got Kylie Tink, Trent Zimmerman, Catherine Renshaw, Victor Klein. If you want to be involved in that, we've got the link in the article below, or you can just go on to events at Humanitics and put in North Sydney Candidate Information Night.
If you were living under a rock and you hadn't seen anything about the election, North Sydney's quite an interesting seat because of the role of, the Teal independence, and, it's a bit of a microcosm to the whole country, actually. So it will be interesting to see how the debate goes. Who's moderating?
Me. I am. I've moderated the council one. It went really well. A lot of people think it's a 2-horse race. I think there's actually a 3-horse race. The Labor's got a very impressive candidate, and I think they're all impressive, I guess. But there's those three. They had a big debate on Sky News, and all three of them scored some points, so it'll be interesting to see. But it's not a safe seat anymore, which, by the way, North Sydney has been a Liberal seat, but we also had Ted Mack as an independent, so North Sydney has a history of some independence.
People sometimes complain about their politicians, but this is your chance to interact, see what they really say, and, make your vote count. I think that's the key now. It's not about, I have to vote. It's actually make the most of it. It is a civic duty. It's especially when you see with what's going on around the world, it's an actual amazing thing that we have democracy in this country. There's no violence, there's sausages and food involved on the day. So come to the event on Monday night, have a look online. You don't even have to get out of your bed to do it.
No, and speaking of sausages, we love our democracy snag, but we also like our democracy cupcake. And In The Cove will be telling you close to the event, the 21st of May voting day, polling day, where you can grab your snag and also help out the local schools, because it really is a great fundraiser for all the local schools. Now, just to bear in mind that the Lane Cove Public School will not be a polling booth because they've lost their hall, and that's usually one of the biggest polling booths. But St Michael's will be one, and also Mowbray is also a big one.
In The Cove events.
The Lane Cove Fun Run is back. After 2 years of cancellation, the Lane Cove Fun Run will be taking place on the 11th of September. It takes place around Longueville, and there are 2 things you can get involved in. You can do the 2-kilometre Longueville Family Dash, or you can if you're a serious runner, you can do the 5K walk or run. And it's a huge fundraiser, not just for the Lane Cove Public School, but 10% of all proceeds go to the Sydney Community Services, which helps out our elderly, disabled, and also did so much during COVID with respect to helping people who couldn't access services. And what's even more exciting, and I know that you've just got a new puppy, is that your dog can enrol and have its own bib.
Look, I will get young Ted measured up for the bib. He's a good runner. I'm not so sure about myself, but I will got a few months to lose a few kilos and stretch those hamstrings to see if I can join. I can definitely walk it.
Oh, yeah, and there's prizes for the best costume, and it's a real family day. In the Cove has a tent there so that we can meet our readers, and we love it. But it's good because, there's the 5K starts off first, and that's for the really serious runners, and there are some serious runners, and there's great kudos for coming in first. And then the 2K is where all the fun happens. People bring prams and dogs and you name it. It's a really great day.
All right, so everyone, there's great walking tracks and running tracks around Lane Cove, and I know that there are articles in the Cove about that. So make sure you start training now. You got a few months. You got a few months to get ready.
You can, but you can also register now because there's a flash sale, and you just go to Lane Cove Fun Run. There's a website called Lane Cove Fun Run. So it's actually exciting because events are starting to come back. We had Christine Arnoux in the canopy last week, and they raised $3,000, which was donated to Give It, flood impacted New South Wales residents, and the Lane Cove Council put that on. And also I heard that we were supposed to have an ice skating rink in the canopy, but COVID came and that got canned. But guess what? It's coming back this year. So some exciting things are happening. And then the second Sunday in October, put this one in your diary, the world-renowned, much-loved Lane Cove Rotary Fair is back. And again, In The Cove has a tent, and we'd love to see you there. There's so much happening, Rob, and if people subscribe to our newsletter, which they can do on our website, they will get details of that in their inbox every Wednesday night.
So look, make sure you subscribe if you don't already, and there's the usual places: Facebook, Instagram, all the In The Cove, the multimedia empire, Jackie, that you've created. Jackie, we've got a guest today.
Yes, a very exciting guest. One that I've actually known for a long time, and one of our first followers. We have Koyla Miller, who is a Lane Cove resident who's been involved in the Army Reserve for a long time, and he went to Lismore to provide some assistance as part of the Army's role there, and it's really interesting listening to what he did and how he's been involved in the Reserve.
In the Cove special guest.
G'day, Koyla.
Hi, Rob. Good morning.
Hi, Koyla. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Now, Koyla has been a In The Cove follower since, I think, day one.
Pretty sure. Yeah, that's right, Jackie.
Yeah, long time. I don't even... How did you find out about In The Cove?
I think you and I bumped into each other on the street, and you introduced it as the beginnings of some of your early days when you were spruiking it physically to people, and then went back, joined it on Facebook, and have been an avid follower since, seen its growth, and been involved in different elements of it, I think, every now and again.
Yeah.
And it's great. I think micro reporting around the community is critical. So it's really been a powerful element of living here and making the community what it is today, I think.
Oh, no, thank you. Okay. So, Koyla, actually, how long have you lived in Lane Cove?
We have lived in Lane Cove since 2005 when we moved back from San Francisco. My wife and I lived overseas. Prior to that, we were living in Surrey Hills. But Simone, my wife's mother-in-law, was a Lane Cove local. And when we came back, we decided to live here a little bit more closer to her. And we loved the leafiness of it and the community feel when it was 2005. Yeah.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history. Everyone said, you're crazy. It's so remote. All of our friends who lived on the east who don't cross a bridge or a tunnel.
Look what they're missing out on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Koyla, how did you first get involved in the Army Reserves, and how long have you been involved with it for?
So early on, in my early 30s, I started getting involved in outdoor adventure sports, and I was doing running and kayaking and mountain biking and adventure races. And at one point, while I was doing an adventure race, I thought this would be a really good activity, and it seems to, correlate also with some of my community mindedness and spirit. So I was the president of the Lane Cove PNC for a couple of years, Lane Cove Public School Parents and Citizens Committee, and I've always been interested in contributing back to my community. And I thought maybe I'll investigate joining the Army as a reservist, and I did. And it was a really a culmination of a whole range of those activities: community service, giving back, and some of my outdoor adventure activities. I went to what's called the U Day, YOU, where they talk to you about what you can contribute and how you can grow. And then I participated in some of the assessments, and they said, yeah, come along. And next thing I knew, 6 weeks in Kapuka, which is the basic training for all of the reservists. Go through a range of different programs. I did what's called a general service officer training. So it can take anywhere from, say, 2 to 4 or 5 years because it's part-time. And then became a signals officer in the reserves. And I joined in 2015 and have been Army Reserve officer, commissioned in 2020, and now continue to serve.
How many hours a month would that take up?
So it's interesting, you see that ad. It's one day a week and a weekend a month or something. So it pretty much is. Tuesday nights, I do what's called parading, which isn't actually walking up and down parading. It's just attending an army base where we conduct our training and activities. So that's on Tuesday nights. And then about one weekend a month, we go to our field exercises or our training exercises in different locations, mostly army bases around New South Wales. And then in between that activity, there's also ongoing career progression training and other courses that are of relevance to the corps that you're in. So if you're a signaller, there's different training to if you're an infantryman versus an engineer. Each have their own separate training pathway.
Just tell me, Collier, what's a signaller mean? I mean, I know in your work life you're involved in sort of cybersecurity. Are they linked at all?
They are linked somewhat. Signals Corps is effectively the group of Army individuals that support and provide communications capabilities to units out in the field. So everyone doesn't just carry mobile phones like in civilian life. You need to have approved, encrypted, and effective communications between the units outfield, and that involves radios, antennas, particular encrypted devices, mechanisms for communicating long distances with effective, effective sound, basically, so that people can hear what's going on and understand what's being communicated. So a signals officer works with a range of different signals capabilities to provide that to the unit.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
It really is.
And you've been involved in a recent deployment to Lismore. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the things as a reservist that you can do is effectively volunteer for different deployment types, one of which was the recent Lismore support of the floods. It's defense assistance to community. So it's a DAC activity. And basically, what it means is we can put our hand up to attend and support different emergency response activities like the op bushfires, op COVID, and this op flood assist. So my role was to go and be what's called a staff officer, an S6, 6 being a signals person, and I sat in the headquarters of the Joint Task Unit in support of coordinating all of the communications between the different elements that were out there providing support. So if you think about it, there's council, there's water, energy, and electricity organizations, and there's the Army, and there's the SES. They all have different means for communicating, and we needed to bridge those so that we could communicate effectively and work together effectively in support of all the different activities that were being carried out in Lismore and around the whole broader district. So all the way from Lismore to Nimbin to, even Byron Bay, we had people there as well.
Is this the first time you've been deployed in that sort of operation, civilian operation?
It was the first time I've been deployed. Previously, I'd done a number of training and simulation-like activities, but this was the first official deployment that I partook in. And it was a steep learning curve. I think there's so much more to all of these activities than people either learn about or get knowledge of unless they're on the ground. I think a good example is, even my family said, why don't we send more troops? And it's like, well, if we send 1,000 people, we have to sleep them, we have to feed them, we have to provide toilets, and we don't want to take away resources and capability from the people that are already there. So there's a lot of balancing that needs to be conducted between providing assistance and then also, in the attempt to provide assistance, cause more hassle than it's worth. So that balance needs to be worked out and evaluated and developed slowly and carefully, so that you don't make things worse. You want to repair broken roads, you need heavy equipment, but you can't take that heavy equipment straight away, because often the roads are damp, wet, and muddy, and you're just going to make it worse by trying to take those vehicles there. So you have to wait a certain period of time. So all of that coordination and activity needs to be managed effectively, so you're not making things worse.
I think one of the things we all experienced watching those floods is that, we felt helpless, and obviously there were places to donate. I know that we were doing stuff in Lane Cove, and things like food and blankets and all that kind of stuff was necessary, but there was still a feeling of helplessness. What was it like to be on the ground there? Because you actually, could say, "Oh, actually, I'm actually can really do something in this situation."
Yeah, look, it was quite overwhelming on arrival. The rubbish was still in the streets. There were still cars upside down in the street. I drove past hundreds of meters of shops, and as someone from Lane Cove, if you think about, the plaza, that whole central area of Lismore was underwater. So every shop was boarded up and closed. All the electricity, all the plumbing, all the power points, everything was ruined and destroyed. And even if it wasn't, if it was high enough that it was on a third floor and it was the carpets or the rugs, it still stank, and it still had the mold already growing, and just so many horrible things, that it was quite impactful, being there. And it's you got to eat that elephant one bite at a time, and start doing one thing after another. um, but it was difficult, and you also felt the responsibility, and I think as a military member, you bear the weight of community perceptions and other activities that are ongoing. So that was challenging as well, but it's great to go there and to do something. And we saw lots of trucks pull up with donations. We had some of our troops handing out that gear. I went to an area near Nimbin where there was a corner store, effectively, in the middle of kind of three roads that came together, and it was closed, but out the front were pallets of tin cans, pallets of toilet paper, water bottles, and community members from around the area could simply come and collect what they needed. There was a notice board in that location where people could write and leave messages for each other. So it was a really good way to see the community coming together and being supported by people who had contributed donations and other elements. And that was, a really powerful reminder of the contribution that others had made to that community. And you hope that it would be, that it would be reciprocated if it came to any other community.
How long were you there for?
I was there for 7 days. So one of the nice things about being a reservist is that you can commit sometimes to, as little as a week, and as much as you know, I guess your work will permit. So given that I've already done some other training and other activities, that was really the extent of my capability at that time. My work was, able to say, yeah, sure, take a week, and they would cover it as a Defence Force leave. So we have a leave policy at my corporation, and that provides me with the support so that I can conduct those activities. And that week was actually a good week to be there in my mind. It was kind of the wrap up of the reserve time and the handover and transition to the full-time army that was arriving on site. So much of the early days was supported through reservist activity, and then slowly the full-time army were bringing the right forces to bear to support the ongoing reconstruction efforts.
Mm. And how do others get involved in the Army Reserve? Are they active? You see the ads, they're actively recruiting. Is it something that people still want to be involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reserves is great and is getting a better understanding of how to operate within a kind of the world that we're at now. There's certainly opportunities for some remote activities, but being an army, it's often about connecting. And so you simply speak with a Defence Force recruiting agent, and they step you through that process. And there's many different roles to support. You can be a logistics officer or a logistics team member, help coordinate the shipping and moving of equipment around the country, particularly for disaster recovery activities. And anything you need to learn, the Army will train you. Yeah, so you don't need to be an engineer to join an engineering unit. You don't need to be a cybersecurity specialist to join a communications or a signals unit. The Army will teach you those things. You need to be, fit and healthy and willing to contribute and learn. And when you have those things, they'll work with you to improve all of the elements of your capability, including your fitness and health, as well as the things you need to know to support what the Army is working to support. And that's just Army. There's also Navy and Air Force, of course. Navy is a little bit harder to be a reservist because they go away on a ship for a long time, so it's a little bit trickier. But there are different roles that involve, being on a Navy base, for example, that don't involve being on a ship. So there's certainly different roles that are available for anyone who's got any interest in joining the Australian Defence Force in support of, the security of our nation.
So, Koyla, where were you? How were you sort of housed when you're up there?
So Lismore has an army base, and all of the defence personnel that I was with basically slept in the army base. So there were 3 of us in a small office in one section. There were also people sleeping in, conference rooms. We try to maintain a small footprint, if you will, in the facility. As more people came, Southern Cross University Gym was a facility that people were housed in. So lots of cots. Being in the Defence Force, you don't get hotel rooms and other things. But really, it's about having a small, light footprint. So people were jam-packed, and we're kind of familiar with that in the Army. And then providing support through that area. So the kitchen was a big tent where the food was produced. They tried to use local produce, local bread, trying to reinvest through the community to support them in that way as well. So we're going to feed all those people. We get the food from the local community, and that reinvests income and jobs back straight away into the community as well. So so being on site means that there's a whole lot of people. We have, like I said before, people who are involved in logistics, organizing, people arriving, coordinating accommodation and food and, portaloos and all those kinds of things in support of making sure that we don't impact the local environment more than we need to.
It sounds absolutely awesome. Was it as awesome as your first night back in Lane Cove in your own bed?
Look, they each have different benefits. I love sleeping in my own bed at Lane Cove. That's always a nice thing. You get the comfort of home, and that involves the people as well. But there's certainly in the Army a camaraderie and a sense of accomplishment in supporting a local community that's in need. And I think that's something that speaks to a lot of people, whether they're soccer coaches helping local kids at community sporting events, or if it's someone that has more time and capability that can contribute to the Australian Defence Force. So really it's about feeling good about giving, and then some of those things matter less. It's okay if you're sleeping on a cot. It's about what you're doing.
What happens in the Cove stays in the Cove.
I got to say, Jackie, what Koyla went through going and helping out is both inspiring but also very grounding. Like, we're in this world, there's lots of stuff going on, natural disasters I think it was an amazing thing that he helped out, but it does make you, think about your own environment as well.
Look, he's always been someone who's been very community-minded. He was the president of the Lane Cove Public School, and he just has taken his community involvement to a next level, and good on him. But I think that's all we've got time for, Rob.
Remember to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Let your friends know that haven't listened to the podcast, and have a good week. And remember to cast your votes in a couple of weeks.
Vote early and vote often. Well, not really, but you know what I mean.
Thanks, Jack. See you later.
Bye.
This podcast has been produced by localpodcast.com.au. If your organisation needs a podcast, contact Rob 0404 289 956.